normal?
were you thinking?
I was just like, is this normal? Like, it's 3 a.m.
I had slow cooked stew with homemade sourdough that night. You probably know where this is going.
A lot. And you're like, okay, it stopped. And I was like, I am there for literally whatever she needs me to be. And sometimes what she needs you to be is out of the way.
Let me paint the scene.
Every good story starts with, so there we were.
Yeah, so there we were. First of all, I had been having prodromal labor for how many times was I like, I'm feeling contractions for probably at least a week. Remember the week before we called the midwife and we thought it was going to happen that night when the storm happened? It didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was more you wanted it to happen. And she was like, I can feel it. She told everyone. And then this storm came and went and she was like out in the rain.
I was like, come on, barometric pressure. She didn't come. She came when she wanted to. Lesson number 1, babies will come on their birthday. Friday night comes, I was 40 weeks and 6 days, so I was almost a week over my due date. And we're folding laundry. We were going to go to Costco on a hot Friday night date. And then I was not feeling super well, which you hear now women, when they talk about labor looking back, they're like, now that I look back, I realize I felt like icky. Like, I wouldn't say I felt sick, but I didn't feel good. And then my water broke at 8:30 p.m. on a Friday night in a huge gush, which everyone says labor doesn't happen like the movies. You know, you don't get a big water breaking.
You did.
It happened like the movies. It was a big gush, and I was like, my water just broke all over our carpet. Max was like, okay, immediately gets towel, starts cleaning up. Call the midwife. I'm standing in the shower because that's what people don't say is your water breaks, but then it continues to break. You're just like continually leaking water. Telling her, then the cramping starts. So like I didn't have any contractions. My water broke strong in like huge gushes. My contractions were within an hour.
4 minutes apart. It was like,
yeah.
I remember you were like, she had this app and she's like, hey, track the contractions. The contracting. She's contracting.
She's contracting.
And you're sitting there like, hey, track them. And I remember you're like, okay, now. And I remember looking at the time and it was like 3, and you're like, okay, it stopped. And I was like,
and it starts blinking like, go to the hospital. I'm doing the mile circuit while he's doing this because she was ROA, which if you know what that means, she was head down, but she was on the right side. She was LOA the entire 3rd trimester. 2 hours before my water breaks, she switches to ROA. So I was like really nervous that she was going to be posterior. She wasn't, but I was doing the mile circuit trying to make sure she was stayed in the proper position. So I'm like in this awkward like head down, butt up position. Finally, we were just like, let's just go in because they were so close together for so long. We were like, we might as well. We go in. They don't even take me to the birth room. They take me to one of their offices because I think they were just like, they were unsure. And I think this is super common. First time moms are like, my contraction started, I gotta go. Like, I'm gonna have this baby in a minute. And they're like, no, you're not. Which, they were right. I didn't have the baby in a minute. You know, they're talking to me. Very awesome team. Yeah, very awesome team. 2 midwives there, and she's timing my contractions, and I'm sitting on the table. I'm like, okay, I'm having one.
Fast.
I go.
Let's pause right here and go back 5 hours. And Jess had been, as you should, again, if we go...
Fueling. I had... slow cooked stew with homemade sourdough that night. You probably know where this is going. And I have a strong contraction. I don't feel like I'm in a lot of pain, but I get really nauseous all of a sudden. And they're looking at me and they're like, okay. And I said, ooh, I don't feel very good. I projectile vomit all of the stew all over their office. 2 seconds later, they're like, we're going to take you to the birth room. Yeah. So I got into the birth room. And labor's starting. They run a bath for me. I kind of get changed. And I'm like, oh, this is happening, right? Like, we had brought our bag. So Max set up the music. And I had brought, like, I tagged my Bible for scriptures I wanted to read over me, all that stuff. And so we're, like, settling in. And I'm thinking, this is totally doable. I'm, like, in the bath. I'm relaxed. I'm listening to worship music. They're still coming in fairly often. My midwife's assistant, Megan, she gets there. I was super happy to see her. This is, like, an hour or two in. This is, like, midnight, 1 o'clock by now, right?
Yeah.
But I'm like, this is totally doable. I'm relaxing. I'm like, wow, all my research is like, they really works. Like, I'm not in that much pain at all.
So you. Pro tip, don't get in the bath right when you get somewhere. Because here's what happens. She starts to lose, because again, she had lost all of her fuel.
Oh, I kept throwing up. That was what was happening in the bath,
so you keep throwing up. She's losing all of her fuel. She's losing a little bit of energy. and she's trying to relax in the bath.
I was
keep
getting
yourself
cold
up.
too.
I mean, cold. she's tired. She's cold.
I was getting wet.
You're in a bath. You put your head back.
I was stupid. I literally dumped my head in the water.
It's just it's something to think
dumb.
about.
Yeah.
Don't get in right away, and if you do, don't get your entire head wet because then she's cold through it. But
that's when they started getting uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and that was when I started to experience back labor. And I, of course, thought that if you do all the right things and she's in the right position, you won't have back labor. Not true. You can have back labor even when baby is in an ideal LOA position, whatever it is. I've come to learn and talk to a lot of other moms that sometimes it just happens. I'm not sure. I had a lot of back labor and the contractions were a minute apart. Mm-hmm. And they were lasting anywhere between 45 to like 75 seconds long. And I'm here thinking, okay, we're like in the thick of labor. I mean, this is happening. I was laying on the bed. We tried the shower.
I was going to say, yeah. So the shower was a nightmare. She had a workout ball in the shower.
Birth ball.
And it plugged the drain and we flooded the bathroom. I get out and I step onto and I'm like,
it's like why is my pool? Don't block the drain. And also, I mean, some people love the shower, but if you're going to do a shower, I think it's better when you have some sort of enclosed shower because it was like, I'm cold except for under the warm water. But then you can't be completely under the warm water. So then it was making contractions worse because, as I've said before, like if you're tensing your muscles or you're shivering, it makes it more painful. And so immediately I was like, I don't want to be in the shower. Get me out of here. Got back in the bed. I had to be completely naked because all my clothes were wet, which is another pro tip. Bring another bra.
Just bring 2 sets of everything.
Yeah, bring 2 sets of everything. Bring 2 sets of everything just in case you get in the water early or something gets wet or you throw up on your clothes. By that time I had thrown up 4 times. I mean, I threw up a lot when I was in the bath. And got to the point where I was still even heaving to throw up, but nothing was coming out because I had literally thrown up everything. And I think that really stalled my labor because I felt so weak. So you had
no energy.
This is 2.
Yeah, 2:30. You're out of energy. But in your mind, you're going, we're close.
Yes.
So, like, in her mind, it's like, okay, this is a quick labor. It's intense. There's no breaks. But, okay. Like, we're close.
Right, because there was literally no breaks. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone talked about contractions like they were waves. And there would be a break. And sometimes there were. But it was like, it was barely anything.
And so I'm sitting there as the husband going, like, is this
what were you thinking?
I'm just like, is this normal? Like, it's 3 a.m.
Were you scared?
I don't know, but I was just like, you have no understanding of what's normal. Yeah. So you're sitting there and you were, of course, in a ton of discomfort. I wouldn't say pain. It was just like a lot of discomfort for you at that point. And, you're having me do the...
So then I'm like, do counter pressure. Because I've researched this. We've talked about this back labor, counter pressure. He didn't know what he was doing. That was a one thing we didn't practice was proper counter pressure. He would go to do it in the contraction and I'd be like, no. And Max is like trying to be helpful, but it wasn't quite working. And so bless my midwife and Megan that was there because the counter pressure was so valuable. It was the only thing that provided relief when my contraction would come around to my back. It was the only thing. And I also think it really helped her drop because you're basically what you're doing is you're pushing on like the sides of your pelvis and you're opening the bottom part of your pelvis. So you're pushing on the top and you're opening the bottom part to make room for baby to drop. And it also really helps relieve that tension for back labor.
Humility as a partner is super helpful in that context because you're just sitting there going like, this isn't about you. She's not trying to be mean. She's not trying to, be personal there, and you can't take it personally because, it's not about it. So I'm trying every time that she was asking me to, and then when Megan came in, I was just grateful because I was like, okay, like I'm clearly not doing this well, and I'm not going to take it personally, but someone is there and someone is helping my wife, and being okay with that, and being like, get out of the way, let the midwife come in and or doctor or whatever do her job. Yeah, their job was helpful for me, just as in like my mindset. But.
Yeah, I also think Lord willing, we have other children. I'm very excited because I think with each birth, you will feel a lot more confident. Like the first birth, I think in general is just really stressful.
I don't know if I'll ever be good at negative pressure. I felt like
negative pressure, counter pressure,
whatever.
Anyway, all that to say, so this is like.
So they come in. Yeah.
They come in. What is this? Like 2 or 3 a.m.
I think it was 3.
And she goes, do you want me to check you? And I had declined checks. I had one check before when I was like, it was like shortly after my due date, and I wasn't planning on getting checked, but I was there in the office and I thought, whatever, like, let's just get it. And it was very painful, which, coming to find out, is actually pretty common. And something I tell other moms is, like, you don't have to get checked because it doesn't change the progression of where you are. Like, it doesn't change when baby's gonna come. It just lets them know about where you are. Yeah. And if you think it's gonna hurt your mental state, don't get checked. I never asked to be checked, and they always, that team's really great, they ask for consent. They always ask before they do anything, do you want, like, us to check you? And at that point, I really said yes, because I thought they were gonna be like, you're almost done.
Yeah.
And she checked me, and she said, do you want me to tell you? And I was like, obviously it's not good if you asked me that.
As a partner, that was wildly discouraging.
Yeah, me too.
No energy, struggling, all the things. And then to hear she's like, what, 2.5?
I was 3 centimeters. I was still in early labor. But here's the thing I want to say, and this is why I say you don't need to get checked, and next time I'm not going to get checked. But what I didn't realize and what we'll share is that you can be 3 centimeters dilated and, like, not fully effaced, all these things, and within an hour be ready to push. So in my head, I was thinking it was, what was it? 6 or 7 hours to get here. Oh my gosh, that means another 6 or 7 hours to get 3 more. That's not how it works at all. And so I think just to protect my mental state, I would not get checked again. And I would say, if at all you're feeling like it's going to stress you out, don't get checked. Because your baby is coming. Just ask yourself, if this is not what I want it to be, will that discourage me and will that like get in the way of my mental space? Just say no.
Yeah, and that provided nothing.
Even if you're in a hospital, you can decline checks. Like you can decide what is done to you. So that was discouraging. I felt like I wanted to cry.
Yeah. And that's when they came in because they were trying to get us to sleep. Nothing was working. This is when they came in with the Benadryl.
Well, no, they came in with the IV. Remember?
Fair.
Because they were like, we think her body is so depleted, she's stalling.
At the same time.
Yeah, so they gave me an IV, which I'm very grateful for because
You drained a bag in like 15 minutes.
Yeah, I was very dehydrated from throwing up so much. They weren't in the room the whole time, so they would come in, check on baby. They checked on baby regularly, her heartbeat, she was great. And they would go in and out, so they weren't sitting there watching me. Yeah, so they gave me homeopathic.
Nailed it.
I just remember them putting pellets in my mouth, and they were doing 3 things. So they put IVs, and the point of the Benadryl was they were like, maybe we can just knock her out so that she has to rest so that she can get strength. The whole point was that they were trying to give me strength to be able to like finish labor.
Yep.
They gave me 2 Benadryls?
Yeah.
Did not knock me out. My body just powered through them. Yeah. I remember they were putting the pellets of homeopathy in my mouth. I'm a big believer in natural remedies, but in that moment, I remember thinking, like...
This is doing...
Oh, like, they're really putting pellets in my mouth right now. Like,
The 2 biggest things were the 2 IVs, because you drained both of those bags, and then you had color back in your face a little bit, and I think it gave you the strength, and then the roars.
Okay, so then my contractions got very painful. I started to roar. Like, they were... I was laying on my left. I was laying in between. Then the contraction would start, and I'd go to all fours. That was just instinctively what would happen. And I would go counter pressure. I would like say, whoever was in the room, counter pressure. Like I needed it so someone would climb up and give me counter pressure.
That phrase, like it's straight PT. I start to get like a tick. It's like counter pressure.
No. They checked me out 3 centimeters at 2:30, 3 o'clock. Within 2 hours, I went
from 2.5 or 3
centimeters.
To roar.
To roaring in transition. And then my body starts convulsing. You know when you're throwing up and you're having like heaves, like your body heaves to like throw up? It was like that, except it was heaving downward. And I'm literally on all fours, guttural, groaning, roaring, like didn't even know I could make those noises. And my midwife peeks in. She goes, I know that noise. And she comes in and I'm like, something's different about these contractions. Yeah. Like something is like pushing, like my body's pushing down. Like, and I couldn't control it. And it was just overwhelming my body. And she checked me and she goes, well, you're ready to push. I was completely through transition. This was 2 hours after they last checked me. So all that to say, it can happen very quickly.
Yeah. One of like a bit that I went through is during transition and all of those things, watching it, there's a little bit more like a midwife presence. And I actually asked the midwives, I was like, hey, can I go out really quick? Because it's just as a partner watching like a lot, I tend to be more empathetic than most. And so watching her go through that was really difficult. And again, as the partner in going through the birth process, like if you need that and there's someone there to kind of tag in just for a little, like go control yourself, because I'll be honest, like I just had to go and weep for a little bit. Like it was just kind of like, it was very hard to see her going through that. And so I was just kind of left, had a moment, collected myself, breathed a little bit, was praying, and then kind of went back in the room. Give yourself permission to leave for a little bit, figure out how to collect yourself, come back in, be there for your partner.
And that's another thing too is I was thinking about this before. Like I wanted to make sure that Max had snacks in our bag. I was under no impression that it was going to be easy for him, but it's really hard on you to, it's just physically, especially if you're in any position holding your partner while they're pushing, like it's physically demanding on the birth support partner. So snacks, like be prepared, because also you need to be at your best to support me. If you're not well fed or you're not well like nourished or anything like that, she's sleeping. Then you're gonna feel weak, and then it's like both of us are weak, and then we're just not a help. Like he's not a help at all. You know, that's why I say like involve him in the education, involve your partner when you're talking through, because you don't want to be all researched and prepared and feeling really good, and then your partner be there and be like, I bet.
Yeah.
Anyway, so where were we? Okay, pushing. So that was, I started pushing at 5:45.
Yeah.
5:30, 5:45. So gut check, ready to push. And I'm like, okay. At that point, most moms that know when you kind of wait for your body to push, your body does start pushing on its own. So I was not pushing in the beginning of pushing. My body would get the wave of contraction, and I was just like holding on, knowing that my body was doing something. I tried a lot of different positions. I instinctively tried to push on all fours because I spent a lot of my labor on all fours. Just every time there was a contraction, I just got on all fours because that was just instinctively what I did. But I think because of the exhaustion and maybe the Benadryl or lack of sleep, whatever, all those things combined, my muscles were shaking. Like I couldn't hold myself up. And I'm fairly strong. Like I did not expect that to happen. And I couldn't hold myself up. So then they brought me to like hang on the bed, and my doula was like, why don't you try in a squatting position? And I was like, girl, if I can't hold myself like this, I definitely cannot squat. And she's like, okay. So then I did like a one leg up, one leg down squat, so that and we tried that for a little bit. So they were checking baby's heartbeat after each contraction.
When they were going in and checking the heartbeat, there were some times when it elevated or slowed down too much. So they have like their optimal range, and there was times when like in a specific position they just had like an air of concern. And so it's again as a partner, you're like, and that's why.
But it wasn't like concern where we're really nervous. It was just like they would be like, baby doesn't like this position, let's change. I tried a whole bunch of different positions until I swore I'd never push on my back. Guess where I ended up pushing? I pushed on my back. I will say I wasn't flat on my back. They propped me up. So I was sitting like this with like my legs here, and I was holding my legs. This is when I would have gone in the water. I would have gotten in the water to push and not gotten in the water for any of the contractions. Because by that time, I remember having the thought, I kind of wish I was in the water. But after the whole thing, I was like, I'm not moving. It would have been a nightmare. It would have been a nightmare to get me into the water. I got on my back and I start pushing. And I remember when I was pushing, being like, really wanting to relax and like let my body push and kind of breathe my baby out, which is what I recommend to all moms, because your body will push your baby out. And when you're tensing, you're contracting your pelvic floor, which actually makes it harder for baby to come out. That was one thing that I would do over again. Was I was very confused because I had never pushed before, and I didn't want to. I was like, I'm just gonna let my body push. And then my midwife was like, you have to put effort in. I was trying to remember all that I had learned and practice. But at the same time, I will say there's still an element, no matter how intuitive I was, no matter how, I think confident or well-researched I was, the first time you give birth, there is still an element of like, what is going on? Honestly, like I trusted my body. There was never once in my birth where I was afraid, ever. There was never once in my birth where I thought I couldn't do this. But there was many moments in my birth where I was like, what is going on? So pushing was kind of hard to figure out at first, but then once I got the hang of it, they were like, oh, like this is actually a really great position. Baby's coming. So I pushed for a total of 50 minutes and she was born at 6:45 on the dot. I remember they were like, do you want to see her?
Which is funny because that's when she wakes up all the time now.
Isn't that funny when you say that? It really is so true. She was rosy and sweet and had lots of hair, and they put her on my chest. And I remember Max was like, I remember because I heard him. He's crying, and I remember him saying, like, this is our daughter. Like, he's like crying, saying, this is our daughter, this is our daughter. And I looked like I had just fought a war single-handedly. I was just like, and I just remember saying, like, it's over. Like, it's done. Like, I needed time to kind of be brought back down to earth. When I think of my birth, I think of, like, really, really intense. But when I watched my birth video back of pushing, I was very calm. It was actually a very calm. I was breathing. Everyone was really quiet. It was dark. And that just goes to show, like, it's so crazy how, like, in the woman's body is just this huge thing that's happening. But it's so natural and beautiful, and it's just normal. It's really crazy. She, latched right away, and I think within 20 minutes I pushed out the placenta, and that felt like a relief. It was crazy, and we had skin to skin time, and it was just really sweet. Remember? What is the number one piece of advice you would give, like, let's say a couple's watching this, that you would give both of them or the birth support partner as they're preparing for?
Be curious about it, because it's not just about her, it's about you. So, like, understand as much as you can about the birth process, and then be humble. You're a servant there. You are there to support her. It's not about you. Whatever you can do to be a service, really, is my suggestion. So figure out what that's going to look like throughout the process. Yeah, and don't let whatever you're going through detract from what she is. I feel like you could practice everything, and there's always going to be, like, I felt like all the things that we practiced, it was like something's going to come up that you didn't prepare for. So having this is like, prepare for what you can prepare for, and don't, be just like hands off on that process. But then also, like I said, have that humility. Yeah. She's probably not going to like the things that you practice, and that's okay.
And that's okay.
Don't let that be frustrating.
I think maybe that's the one thing. It's like, if you guys have any lingering fear about birth, which I think it's normal, a lot of people do, talk through that, pray through that, work through that, because that's hard to bring into the birth space. You know what I mean? It will cause you to maybe make rash decisions or feel anxious, and instead of having like a more peaceful, confident birth. We had an unmedicated birth at a birth center. Very positive experience. Hands down, want to do it again. I would actually love to do like a home birth. And people always ask me when I told my family the birth center, they're like, "Oh, do you want to do it in a hospital next time?" And I was like, "No," because I feel like, if anything, thinking about all the discomfort I went through, being around like a team that I wasn't familiar with, or in a room that was bright, or whatever it was, I'm like, if anything, it pushed me more into like the more natural birth. You know what I mean? Maybe your positive birth story doesn't look like twinkle lights and like laughing and like joy. I watched all these positive birth stories, and they were all so beautiful. A positive birth is one where mom feels safe and supported. It's not necessarily one that's like, I'm laughing and it's pain-free. I know women have births like that. That would be great if I had a birth like that. But positivity doesn't mean like, or even everything going exactly the way that you wanted it to. So if you are preparing for birth, or maybe you're reflecting back on your birth and you're thinking like, that didn't go the way that I planned, because I tore and I was really disappointed in myself for like a few weeks, which is crazy. Because I thought we did all the right things and this didn't happen the way that I wanted to. And finally I was like, that's not what this is about. I felt safe. I felt supported. We're happy, healthy, and it was a very positive experience. And so I think setting your expectations of like prioritizing what's really important to you and giving grace to the rest of your birth story is really important. Thanks for coming and joining our birth story. I'm Jess of Nourishing Your Mama, and I make new videos every week on all things intentional, holistic nourishment with your mama design in mind.